Nyanje Chembo Sodan Himi Jang, Zongler Molum Chembo, Nagyada, Banker Dangon Santo, Shermat, Tomba de Janla, give Jam Zara, Nishan Rots and Nishango. Jabar to keep Shanlay Larman, Jimmy Panso Jala, Soranda, Content Tobam, Shinji, Lovo. The supreme, profound, and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Next, we will continue our further discussion of the Udāna Sūtra. We are currently studying the profound chapter on the impermanence in the Udāna Sūtra. This is the final lesson of the first chapter, which focuses on the concept of impermanence. Within the chapter on the impermanence of things, the main teaching is the profound principle that all phenomena are inherently impermanent. It sounds deceptively simple, but when it comes to its actual practical application, it really isn't that easy at all. It often seems much easier to merely talk about it, and it's not too hard to explain it to others. But when it comes to ourselves, to truly see that everything is impermanent, we often think about it ourselves and tell others as well, but it's actually a bit difficult. If we look at the current world population, which is over 7 billion people, those who truly understand impermanence and frequently talk about it are probably very few. Everyone in the world should be aware of this significant fact. Among the global population, approximately more than 80% and perhaps less than 90% of individuals say they possess a religious belief. Of course, this belief is not necessarily Buddhist faith. People have faith in all kinds of diverse religions and spiritual beliefs, but among them, those individuals who truly, as profoundly taught and emphasized in the ancient wisdom of Buddhism, understand impermanence and actually practice impermanence are very few. This is profoundly true and evident even among us Buddhists, whether in our casual daily conversations or in our deliberate words and actions during our tea breaks and shared meals. This principle remains constant. We find not many people truly practice impermanence. In the past, among lay people or monastics in Tibet, many people held this view of impermanence. But nowadays, many young people seem to be influenced by Western culture and basically don't have this concept anymore. In addition, perhaps it is because in this contemporary era, with the overwhelming short video platforms such as TikTok and Kuaishou, and the pervasive influence of various forms of fragmented cultural content, I am concerned that even among those individuals who truly dedicate themselves to deeply contemplating the concept of impermanence within their minds, there aren't particularly many, even among monastics. People always feel that maybe I won't truly die, that so-called death is something meant to be talked about for others. There is always such a kind of deeply persistent, mistaken belief in permanence. For a spiritual practitioner, this is also quite frightening. In the past, many great masters like Asanga have also said that if one cultivates the understanding of impermanence, it serves as a driving force when first entering the Dharma, an aid to progress in practice along the way. And ultimately, it significantly helps to truly perfect one's overall practice and skill set. So when I look at many of these great masters of previous generations, or these practitioners from previous generations, their most fundamental and essential practice was a deep contemplation of impermanence, because if one contemplates impermanence well, they simply won't have time to engage in many of the 8 worldly concerns, nor will they be willing to do many other things that are utterly meaningless for this present life and the life to come. They will definitely devote all their energy and considerable effort to diligently preparing themselves well for the next life. So today we will also continue with the latter part of this extensive chapter. I'm not entirely certain whether any of you have truly developed a sense of impermanence within your own continuum of experiences. No matter what you may do or what you may say, you always feel the pervasive presence of impermanence. Perhaps not, but it is a profound and undeniable reality. On the significant date of October 19th, 2019, when we thoroughly discussed the Analects, a foundational text, I also saw clearly in the detailed notes from their later extensive talks that if impermanence does not manifest next year, we might continue again in February or March of the year. And then over the course of a full 6 years, impermanence did occur, a minor impermanence. The teachings were never continued. So perhaps each of us naturally has a certain feeling. For example, when you're about to go out. Of course, if you're going out for a long time, you should contemplate impermanence even more. If it's just a short trip, you wonder whether you'll actually be able to return. Just like those great masters of the past, when they went to sleep at night, they felt that they might not be able to get up the next day. And at the doorways of practitioners, for example, at the entrance of a certain Geshe's home, there was a cluster of thorn bushes. He always felt that this was a reminder of impermanence. There was no need to do things, so he never cut down those trees. Later, even after the master had attained realization, the trees still hadn't been cut. This is also mentioned in the preliminary practices. So I think for a true practitioner, if one develops a sense of impermanence in their own mind stream, it is of tremendous benefit. On the surface, contemplating impermanence may seem like a form of world weariness, but in reality, it actually makes one more diligent. This is something everyone should understand. So today, let's continue. While I'm speaking, if I happen to skip reading the Tibetan text, please remind me. In the past, sometimes because I have received the transmission in Tibetan, it is also perfectly fine for me to recite it for everyone present. The foolish plan their affairs for winter, spring, and summer, thinking, I should do this and that, unaware that death is approaching. Here, it means they do not understand the true nature of things. They are overly attached to their own bodies and to other things. These people who are overly attached, they have absolutely no interest at all in achieving nirvana or ultimate liberation. All they truly care about is diligently making short-term plans and immediate arrangements solely for themselves. Some truly foolish people who do not fully understand the true inherent nature of things still meticulously have their own intricate set of schemes and personal agendas. What kind of schemes are these? They often say, in the winter season, I plan to do a specific thing. And after winter passes, in spring, I'll do that. Then after that, in summer, I'll do something else. Doing this and that, making all sorts of plans. Each of us might have these kinds of plans. What am I going to do this winter? What will I do next spring? And then what will I do in the summer? Here, autumn isn't explicitly mentioned. Looking at some of the specific cases mentioned here, for example, the comfortable house you live in during the summer months, the house you live in during winter, and the house for autumn. Maybe this refers to autumn and spring, actually. These seasons can be treated the same way. If you have a house to live in summer, it should be cool, and in winter it should be warm. Then, for the seasons of autumn and spring, a moderate and pleasant temperature is generally sufficient. This is particularly true in some of the vast and expansive pastoral areas of Tibet, where the climate can be quite distinct. People live in warmer places during winter and in cooler places during summer. For autumn and spring, they can stay in places with moderate temperatures. It might be the same here as well. This is also mentioned in his case studies. So people who are foolish in this way, when it comes to experiencing the four seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, what do they actually feel? What happiness do they gain? What benefits do they obtain? They make their own plans and arrangements, and they tell others the same things, and they think this way in their hearts as well. But in reality, such people, on the surface, they seem to be like this. They truly feel the strong need for important things like comprehensive annual plans, or various other significant kinds of detailed plans, first making careful arrangements with a clear eye to the future. These are all fine to have, but in reality, maybe you haven't really observed things carefully enough. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't even know when death is truly approaching. In Tibetan, this is actually called an obstacle, but in the commentary, it truly means death. So they do not realize when death will arrive. Actually, for us ordinary people, we actually just make some plans for our own affairs, indeed. And these plans are indeed important. But perhaps we should also plan for death, Because when the time comes for you to eventually leave, what exactly will you do? Some people, when they are about to die, often make a formal will. How my assets should be handled, who will take care of my parents. These are things people might consider. But in reality, what about oneself? If I die from illness, what practice will I engage in? For example, in the Vinaya Sutra root Vinaya, composed by Gongde Guang, it is mentioned that when a person is on the verge of death, if they can gather their spirit and hear some teachings on merit, their previous negative karma can be purified, and so on. It's really just like what was discussed the day before yesterday. If in the hospital, after observation, it turns out that I have an incurable disease and there's nothing that can be done, no hope for a cure in this kind of situation, I need to consider what is the most important thing for me to do. Should I cultivate bodhicitta? Or should I meditate on emptiness? Or should I just endure, go with the flow, and not think about anything? In these aspects, it's worth having a plan. But most ordinary people do not possess one. Some people have indeed inquired about this particular topic previously, haven't they? From a journalist's perspective, if you were to have only one single day remaining, what exactly would you do? For someone without faith, they might think, oh, I should just have some fun, or maybe just enjoy themselves. But actually, at that point, you have no interest in enjoyment. If you're going to die tomorrow, you'd have no interest in that. But as a practitioner, especially for someone who has long contemplated impermanence, at that moment, there's nothing to think about. You've already made preparations. So why did the Buddha recite this verse? Back in the days of Shravasti, there was a merchant's son, a young man of considerable means and standing, who was abundantly blessed and possessed immense wealth. In order to fully enjoy all kinds of luxurious lifestyles, he meticulously built magnificent houses that were designed to be comfortably warm in the winter months and refreshingly cool throughout the summer seasons, and pleasantly moderate in the spring season. He consistently kept building these kinds of remarkable houses, and after he had finally completed them, he tragically died before he could truly enjoy them. After the Buddha learned about this, he recited this verse. As a direct and significant result, 60,000 people also successfully attained realization. That's one version of the story. There's another version of this ancient tale which says there was a very wealthy merchant. This merchant was very much attached to his own subtle distinctions. He was always constantly thinking about doing this specific thing or that particular thing. Later, in direct response to all his various and numerous attachments, the Buddha also recited this verse. That's another account. There are also many other fascinating Buddhist stories which frequently feature a wise and venerable elder. This particular elder was blessed with truly considerable good fortune. He meticulously built many different houses, one to live in during the spring, one for the summer, one for the winter, and another one for the beautiful autumn season. He enjoyed himself in different seasons, making full and complete use of these houses himself. But while he was thoroughly enjoying these wonderful things, he did not practice diligently. He did not observe the precepts, and he was also extremely stingy indeed. He wouldn't make any offerings to the Buddhas or give any alms to others and so on. His temperament was also very difficult to change, a truly stubborn disposition. Later he became dissatisfied again. He built even better houses in the garden. Perhaps he built different ones for spring, summer, autumn, and winter as well. But before he could enjoy them, he suddenly died. After his death, the Buddha also spoke about people like him. He felt that such beings were truly pitiable, that sentient beings are very pitiful. That is why such houses were built as well. Actually, not just in ancient times, even now it's the same, including people like us, the Gawa and so on. We also live in glass houses or similar places in the summer, in all sorts of different places, and in much warmer places during the cold winter months of the year, and in moderate places in the spring. Actually, this is also a kind of enjoyment. The enjoyment people had back then and the enjoyment we have now are both distinct forms of pleasure. But when it comes to enjoyment, some people might go to great lengths just to truly enjoy this kind of life, making all sorts of detailed plans, and even spending an amount of money on these particular things. But in reality, one day all of this will eventually be left behind in the world, and just as some truly great masters have wisely said, we will ultimately leave this world like a single hair pulled out of soft butter, without taking anything with us, and move on to the next life. This is something many people might not realize. We have a certain flaw thinking, maybe I won't die now, maybe I won't die this year. Always living with the idea that we will never die. But we will all eventually die. I'm not entirely sure if I've mentioned this important fact before, but the renowned investor Warren Buffett's highly respected mentor, Charlie Munger, was an impressive 99 years old in the year 2023. He talked a lot about his future plans and what he hoped to achieve in the near future, how much he wanted to invest. Because he was very famous worldwide in the field of investment, he was well known all over the world. His later wealth also came from investments in equity. He really had a unique mind for these things. But in the end, he died quite unexpectedly. After he died, quite a few journalists found it rather remarkable and noteworthy. Just a month before his passing, he held a truly very large-scale and significant event. He started talking about all his future plans and so on. But for most ordinary people in their daily lives, when we reach our 90s, we might not even be interested in thinking about the future and all such important things. Actually, in the past, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche also mentioned this on different occasions. In the first few years after I arrived, he rarely brought it up. But later, as His Holiness approached the end of his life, he often spoke about it. When it comes to worldly matters, as a practitioner, there's absolutely no real need to make all sorts of detailed plans and extensive arrangements whatsoever. When it comes to liberation beyond this world, we should make some plans. For example, what teachings will we transmit this year and next, and what practices will we engage in? What practices will we engage in next year? We must have such plans. But as for worldly matters, if you make too many elaborate plans, then indeed they may not necessarily succeed in the end. If they do not ultimately succeed, you will undoubtedly be left with a sense of regret. So there is truly no real need for that at all. Indeed, in His Holiness's much later years, specifically around the late 1990s, he began to reflect on these matters. He basically made a 4-year plan. In the first year, he taught the Sutra of 100 Karmas. In the second year, he taught the Bodhicaryavatara. In the third year, he taught the Mahamaya Tantra. In the fourth year, he taught the innermost heart drop of the Guru. After that, he basically just really went with the flow. Later on, although he also taught the Wise and Foolish Sutra, the words of my perfect teacher, the Uttara Tantra Shastra. But when he had just begun teaching the Uttara Tantra Shastra, he manifested his final parinirvana. So I think that many people in general may know about His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche, while some people only know of his lineage and aren't very familiar with his true and actual identity. But as someone who personally witnessed him firsthand, I can tell you, I can confidently say that some of his actions, perhaps because I was young at that time, deeply affected me. Maybe I just wasn't mature in many ways back then, and perhaps I hadn't yet personally experienced all kinds of things in society, whether it was joy or sorrow, or the interwoven hardships and pleasures of life. But looking back now from my current perspective, no matter what he said back then to me, there was always a profound meaning behind it. If you slowly savor that meaning over time, it seems to be of great benefit to one's own life and practice. It really helps a lot. So here for us, most ordinary people in the world might make all kinds of plans for spring, summer, autumn, and winter, with different arrangements for each season, but they've never made plans for the very last stage of their lives. I notice that in our world it's common to hear people say, I'm a planner, I'm a designer. When it comes to external things, like houses or architecture, they primarily rely on powerful computers and their own brilliant minds working diligently to make very detailed and excellent plans. Especially nowadays in the field of architecture, there are some outstanding designers and planners. But when it comes to planning their own lives and their own spiritual practice, as well as whether they've prepared for the impermanence that comes at the very last moment, have they made any preparations, any plans? When we ask ourselves the question, we find it's actually very difficult. One day you'll realize, wow, even you yourself know now that you probably don't have much time left to truly live. You then start to sob uncontrollably, to gasp desperately for breath. As the Buddha said, life exists in a single breath. When you're struggling at that moment, if you've made some preparations in advance, I might die soon, and when that time comes, if I've prayed to my guru in advance, or for those individuals who practice the profound Dzogchen teachings, whether it's the union of mother and child luminosity, there are many different practices that can be effectively applied at that very moment. But if you haven't prepared ahead of time, then due to all sorts of external causes of death, which can be extremely fierce, if you don't have a certain level of realization, especially the suffering that comes with the dissolution of the four elements at death, it's truly terrifying. It's like all sorts of extremely frightening and truly unsettling visions keep appearing one after another continuously. So at this critical time, having some thoughtful and comprehensive end-of-life planning is actually quite profoundly beneficial. That's mainly what we're talking about here.
Chevdakina Langnian Dro, Nyandro, Chivi, Debabjin, Nyatron Chivi, Debabjin. Nyandro did the chill, don't know that. Attachment to children and wealth and the prosperity of livestock and possessions, death ultimately takes them away. Like a flood engulfs a sleeping village. This mainly talks about the crucial need to let go of one's own family, since death will claim you in the end. So, what exactly are you planning to do about this situation? People are often deeply attached to their families and personal property, but all of these things will inevitably be subject to impermanence one day. So what exactly does this mean? Generally speaking, for ordinary people, what are they most attached to in their hearts? Is their own children, because they want their lineage to be passed down. To truly pass on the family lineage, one absolutely needs their own direct descendants. Many people nowadays, if they don't have children, they might genuinely feel that their life is somewhat unsuccessful. Especially for many individuals residing in inland areas, particularly those who are a bit older in age, it appears that in contemporary times, for people who were born after the year 1990, the traditional concept and ingrained idea of family inheritance doesn't really matter to them either. As long as they themselves are living well, that's enough. What's there to pass down in the family anyway? What's worth passing down in this broken family? This isn't really a great or perfect inheritance either. If it were a truly great inheritance, it would be a bit of a pity if it were broken off. But in our family, there really isn't any treasure worth passing down through generations. Maybe some young people today think this particular way, but people in the secular world, they especially value their children, their offspring, and their own accumulated wealth and possessions. As for wealth, it's mainly for enjoyment. If you don't have money, how can you possibly go on living? There's just absolutely no way. And when it comes to wealth, there are two distinct types. One is material wealth, for example, gold, silver, and jewels, these kinds of treasures. And then there are livestock, cows, sheep, horses, even pigs, chickens, and all sorts of domestic animals. Nowadays, in big cities, many people might not have these, but farmers and some herders, they all diligently keep various different kinds of livestock and care for them well. These are seen as a sign of their prosperity. Families are especially attached to them. Actually, most people, really are just working for their children and to accumulate wealth. They're always busy with this. Workers are busy at their jobs, farmers are busy in their own roles, and others, including civil servants, teachers, and doctors, are all extremely busy every single day. What are they so busy with? It's all to support their families. When it comes down to it, supporting the family is ultimately for the sake of their children and some savings. That's the goal. Actually, if you truly observe, many individuals are extremely busy. They spend their entire lives working diligently to accumulate significant wealth. But in reality, there will always inevitably come a day when the Grim Reaper takes away all your accumulated wealth, everything you have. It's like a colossal rock grabbing hold of a dragon, just like those old stories, like a dragon. Everything gets taken away, and when that happens, if we use a metaphor to describe it, it's comparable to the summer season when there is an abundant presence of water, and this water progressively gathers and accumulates, eventually leading to the formation of a substantial flood, a powerful and overwhelming torrent. And then people who are soundly sleeping can all be tragically swallowed up. Even now, devastating mudslides happen frequently and with alarming regularity. Just the day before yesterday or so, there was a small village in India where a sudden and unexpected flood appeared. Maybe it wasn't a sleeping village, it happened during the day. People nearby were wailing the entire time, but there was nothing they could do. All of the houses were completely swept away by the devastating flood. It was truly terrifying. In the same way, each of us, for the sake of our families, for our children, and for wealth, we keep ourselves busy. But one day, just like a tranquil sleeping village being completely swept away by a sudden flood, perhaps everyone within your very own home will be gone as well. For example, if a devastating fire breaks out or something similar to that, on the familiar road we used to take from Seerba, nowadays you will often see a small distinctive stupa there. Actually, right next to that very small stupa, there was a family whose house suddenly caught fire at night. It seems like the entire family tragically perished, or at least I distinctly recall that 4 individuals died instantly on the spot. So sometimes when impermanence strikes, it's possible for an entire family to die, or for some members of the family to tragically die. Situations like this do happen. So, as for its story, there was a distinguished person known as Ganges Deva who lived by the majestic Ganges River. He was in fact very wealthy, possessing considerable riches, and he had many children within his household, as well as numerous maids and diligent servants who attended to his needs, and all kinds of various property and other enjoyments. Everything was extremely complete and abundant. But later there was a significant flood, most probably from the mighty Ganges River. Sometimes the Ganges rises very fiercely and powerfully. Even nowadays, during times of flooding, if there's heavy rain or hail upstream, then all the villages located downstream would be swept away, completely submerged by the vast expanse of the water. At that precise moment, the Buddha, with his profound wisdom, also spoke this verse. Additionally, some historical accounts suggest that the Buddha, because there was an individual named Gautama who was a significant figure who experienced impermanence in his own life, and so the Buddha spoke this verse. This is another version of the story. There is also another story found in other Buddhist scriptures, which is about a very wealthy man, someone who is extremely rich. But in his household, he had an abundance of gold, silver, agate, and the 7 treasures. However, his family had no children, he lacked any direct offspring, so he prayed everywhere, to the heavens and the earth, seeking a child, hoping for an heir, praying to the earth god, water god, fire god, and worshipped at all kinds of stupas and temples. But in the end, after a long period of time, he still did not have a child. He was extremely distressed, heartbroken, and completely overwhelmed with profound grief. But later on, it seems he did indeed have a child. A precious baby was finally born. He was extremely, extremely happy. Then he gathered his relatives and friends to celebrate together, marking this special day of having a child. That night, when everyone was sleeping together, a sudden flood unexpectedly occurred. All his relatives, friends, and family members were completely swallowed up by the water, swept away by the flood. After the Buddha, the enlightened one, heard about this particular incident, some accounts suggest that the Buddha, utilizing his profound wisdom eye, clearly understood this situation, and subsequently he also spoke this profound verse. Because at that time the entire family had tragically perished. That is precisely why such a profound and meaningful verse was spoken. So generally speaking, we people in this world are very strongly attached to our beloved children and our material possessions. But there are things that are really worth being attached to. After all, if one is certainly a worldly person, it would also be unreasonable to completely ignore and neglect one's family. That would not be right either. However, you must always be prepared for impermanence to arise at any time. If impermanence does occur, perhaps everyone in the family could all potentially die at precisely the same time. Just like when the devastating COVID pandemic broke out a few years ago, there were entire families where not a single person survived. Many people tragically died after infecting each other. Some families were left with only 1 or 2 survivors. The same thing often happens during earthquakes and also during car accidents. Impermanence can come in many forms, whether it is man-made or natural, and all kinds of situations can occur. So in advance, we should prepare our minds thinking, oh, everything is impermanent. Once impermanence truly happens to us, when these impermanent events occur in our own lives, we are already prepared, thinking, oh yes, I've practiced the teachings on impermanence for so long, and today it has finally and truly come upon me, this feeling. This is just a normal occurrence. Last year, during the cold winter months at the Institute, there were also some major changes that happened. Many Dharma friends had painstakingly and with great effort built their own houses, creating their personal sanctuaries. But suddenly, and quite unexpectedly, they found themselves completely unable to continue living in their very own homes. They couldn't even for a moment, not even stay for a single day. It was as if their time was up, like the lease had expired. At that particular moment, some people still genuinely understood the reasoning behind it. Most people were actually quite able to face this situation. At the time, I also mentioned that there was a Dharma friend who said that while packing his luggage, he would cry a little, then continue packing and cry a little bit more. In the very end, after packing up absolutely everything, he quietly left, with tears welling up in his eyes and a heavy heart. So for many Dharma friends, this might be what we often refer to as the suffering of separation from loved ones. It could be leaving one's parents, leaving one's relatives and friends, leaving one's hometown, leaving one's teacher, or leaving one's guru. Many people will experience this kind of parting at some point in their lives. For oneself, it is truly heartbreaking. But for others, sometimes, because it hasn't happened to them personally, they might not truly feel that pain so deeply. But generally speaking, every single one of us will eventually face countless such changes. But in the end, perhaps the greatest impermanence we ultimately face is death. When death truly comes, nothing else can be done. So we tend to have this thought, as long as you don't die, it's still okay. Last year, I told those Dharma friends, because for many other things, we really have absolutely no viable solution at all. In the end, it's fine. As long as you don't die, as long as you're alive, there will always be new opportunities for you to seize. Maybe it all seems like adverse conditions. Maybe in different places, you'll gain more experiences and methods for your own practice. So I think all of us should have a kind of attitude. Not just saying things on the surface, because anyone can say these things out loud. There's nothing special about that. But to truly let it take root in your heart, to always truly have, whether it's toward samsara or toward all things in this world, a very strong and profound understanding. In this way, when many significant things happen to us in the future, when a lot of important things occur, and in fact many of the events that transpire, most of them may not necessarily be happy events. We might be able to accept the happy things, but most of them are probably things we don't want to happen. For those things we don't want, we should observe them with rational wisdom. Sometimes, if you observe closely recently on the internet, there has been a widespread discussion about how some monks in certain temples are unfortunately not behaving in a manner that aligns with their expected conduct, and indeed, the entire internet is now flooded with these ongoing discussions, talking about their faults. But there are also some people who evaluate things more rationally. When we see news about a person like this, we should actually use rational wisdom to observe. It's very, very important. I personally really think that when everyone is praising someone, saying how wonderful this person is, almost as if he were a truly serene Buddha, I tend to feel a sense of doubt in my heart. Is he really that good? Even though everyone is continuously praising him or admiring him and lauding him without end, at such times, many people, in fact, a great number of individuals, I observed a relatively young individual, and every single time he participated in an event, he was always there. Maybe he himself felt quite helpless about it. People, even when he was very much unwilling, indeed, had already put him on a pedestal. He himself seemed to feel a bit like he really was someone remarkable. But sometimes I wonder, is he really that remarkable? Even though everyone is praising him, is he really that great? And then there are some people, everyone is relentlessly trampling and stepping all over him, including all of his faults, this one and that one. But as for some things, because there are many complicated causes and conditions behind them, so I don't really think that, even though everyone says he's not necessarily that bad. Even if there are some areas where he's lacking, nobody's perfect. It's possible to have shortcomings, but it might not be like that. Otherwise, it is quite possible he might not have reached this position. So sometimes people who truly observe things rationally are not that many. Especially in this internet age, most people just follow the crowd and go with the flow. Whatever others say, everyone just follows along. But there is also a considerable number of people who still use their own wisdom to analyze things. Even though everyone praises him, he still firmly sticks to his own deeply held principles and values. When everyone starts to slander him at that time, he also maintains his own principles. Actually, this is another way to describe impermanence, because when he was doing well before, everyone treated him in a certain way. When things went badly, everyone treated him differently. But in this world, those who truly observe rationally, who truly understand his actual merits or genuinely know his faults, it's hard to say. So sometimes, especially in this current era of rapid information explosion, who is right and who is wrong, or what is reasonable and what is unequivocally not, only those with wisdom and keen insight can accurately discern. If you find yourself relying heavily on the voices and opinions of others to form your own personal perspectives, then it's truly crucial to recognize that sometimes you also profoundly need this kind of subtle and insightful wisdom. Next, let's delve into and discuss. When death arrives, none of your children can save you. Parents, relatives, and friends, no one can truly be your ultimate refuge. Here, the main point is that when we eventually face our demise, at the very end of our earthly lives, in fact, in the entire world, not even your closest friends and family can save you. No one can. It's very difficult for anyone to save you. That's the main idea. We might think, for example, as people often say nowadays, if I just have children, when I eventually get old or perhaps even die in the future, I can rely on them for everything. But in reality, they may not necessarily be able to help. In some aspects, they might be able to help, but in other aspects, there's nothing they can do. In this world, just as it is said in the Buddhist scriptures, when it comes to matters of life and death, we come and go alone through our journey. There is no one who can actually help anyone. When death eventually arrives, whether you die suddenly or unexpectedly, or die an unnatural death, or die from illness and so on. When death comes for each person, even if you have many children, indeed, your own grandchildren and relatives, even they may not be able to save you, to pull you back from the jaws of death. There is nothing you can do either. And then there are your father and mother. In the Tibetan text, the mother is not mentioned, but in the commentary, the mother is included. So the meaning should be parents when explained below. Because if just the father can't save you, it doesn't mean the mother can save you either. So sometimes when translating, since the father can't save you and neither can relatives and friends, if the mother is never mentioned, some people might wonder if perhaps the mother really could save him. So even the loving father and the caring mother who raised you with such profound kindness still find themselves unable to save you. Your own children and grandchildren cannot save you either. If the parents above could truly save you, then maybe your children really could save you too. Your own father and mother, they might be able to save you as well. Nowadays, many people, for example, when it comes to vital organ transplants at such critical times, it is usually the people closest to them, whether it's your children or your parents, who are considered first and foremost. They are genuinely willing to donate their own vital organs, such as their liver, kidneys, or even their lungs. In many significant ways, they are truly willing to offer substantial help, but despite their earnest efforts, they still ultimately cannot save you. And then there are your other relatives, your younger brothers and sisters, older brothers and sisters, and all sorts of other relatives. They simply cannot save you either. Then there are your friends, your classmates, your close buddies, and your very best friends, those individuals with whom you share a deep bond. Nowadays, people have all kinds of diverse and often unique names for these various relationships. But can any of them just save you? Probably not. They can't save you either. It's not probably. They definitely can't save you. Nowadays, many patients think that doctors can save them. Some, when they get cancer, beg the doctor, please save me, don't let me die. Some people even cling to the doctor's white coat. There are people like that. And some maybe towards their teachers, or for those with faith towards their spiritual teachers. They also beg, please bless me, don't let me die. But no one can save you. This is truly very, very difficult indeed. So, in this particular world, actually, There is not a single person you can truly rely on. At that moment, your refuge truly cannot be found anywhere in this world. In the past, in Rajagriha, there was a Brahmin who was as stately as a sal tree. His own body was quite dignified. But when he grew old, his body became bent, and all sorts of signs of aging appeared. He lived to be 120 years old, and in the end, he apparently had 20 sons of his own, just like some powerful kings in Africa. I've mentioned this before in class. Some people have an especially large number of children. He lived to be 120 years old and had 20 sons, and many other descendants as well. One time, all his relatives were joyfully enjoying themselves together in the sprawling garden. While he was peacefully there with his family, he suddenly and unexpectedly died. At the moment of death, if someone wanted to save him, he had 20 sons, so they should have been able to provide assistance, but there was nothing they could do. Even though we often say, when someone gets sick, we call an ambulance, and the ambulance rushes over with its siren blaring, then heads to the hospital, but it's really just an attempt to save them. The doctors also do their best to resuscitate the patient at the end. I think that in many cases, although sometimes people are only temporarily saved actually, when someone is seriously ill or in a life-threatening condition, emergency treatment is necessary, and we still try to save them however we can. In some cases, if their life hasn't come to an end, it's possible for them to come back to life. This kind of phenomenon does happen, but it's still very rare. The probability is extremely low. It's basically very, very difficult, really. This has also been mentioned in other Buddhist scriptures before. Actually, regarding the case we just discussed, in fact, you could say that the case we just mentioned can also be used as an example. And also in other texts like the Chuyao Sutra Udāna Varga, it's mentioned that at that specific moment in time, King Vidudaba commenced a war against the Shakya clan. During the battle in the initial phase, King Vidudaba was preparing to advance and reach the fortified city of the Shakya clan. Throughout this critical period, the city gates were kept closed and guarded. Then they asked Shakyamuni Buddha if there was any solution. And Shakyamuni Buddha said, it would be best not to open the city gates. If they didn't open them, it seemed that King Vidudaba's army wouldn't be able to get in either, and the Shakya clan members wouldn't be able to get out. But as for the people of the Shakya clan, most of them had conscientiously taken lay precepts. When they engaged in combat and fought, they would strategically strike at others' legs or arms, but they would never directly hit any vital points, which could cause severe injury. So at that particular time, if King Vidudaba's side engaged in killing, they might have indeed killed some individuals, but they did not carry out these actions with particular or extreme cruelty. Later, among the Shakya clan, there was indeed a distinguished member of the Shakya clan who, because of his karma from a previous life, ran outside the city himself. Just like it's vividly described in the ancient epic of King Gesar, he bravely charged into King Vidudaba's army entirely on his own. Indeed, he was incredibly formidable and powerful. According to history, he killed 70,000 people. But of course, sometimes in India, these numerical figures might be truly meant as figurative rather than strictly literal. He killed 70,000 of King Vidudaba's men. Later, when he came back, the people of the Shakya clan were quite different from people nowadays. If it were people today, for example, Russians or Ukrainians or anyone else, they would definitely give him some kind of hero title. But at that time, the people of the Shakya clan simply thought among themselves, we are all people of true faith. You truly killed so many people and indeed shamed our caste. If the Shakya clan killed so many people, that would be terrible. Everyone rebuked him. Afterwards, this person had no way to stay in his own homeland and could only leave. Then, when King Vidudaba heard about this specific member of the Shakya clan who had killed so many people, he became extremely angry. He then immediately launched an attack on the city of the Shakya clan. After entering the city's gates, he began to engage in a fierce and relentless battle against its inhabitants, fighting vigorously to overcome them. During the battle, it became clear that the Shakya clan definitely could not escape this time. The Buddha seemed to have this sense. A member of the Shakya clan named Mahanama became a monk. Later, because the entire Shakya clan had become monks, in the end the government of the country could no longer be maintained. It seems that, as the Buddha said or something, he was allowed to continue living as a layperson to take care of the important affairs of Kapilavastu. Then he and the powerful King Vidudabha, actually King Vidudabha was deceiving them as well. He said, "Let me come in first. Let's make a lasting peace agreement so we absolutely won't fight against each other anymore." But after he entered, he started killing. At this point, they had absolutely no way out. In the end, Mahanama said to the king Vidudabha, "If we allow the water in this large pond to completely fill up to its very top, once it has reached its full capacity, then you may proceed to kill every single person. But before that, could you let as many people from the Shakya clan leave as soon as possible?" At that time, he thought about it, thinking it probably wouldn't take very long, since the pond was very large. If the pond were to be filled, it probably wouldn't take very long. So he agreed. After agreeing, he said, "I will hold my breath underwater and keep blocking the hole, and when it's full and I come out, you can kill as you please." At that time, Mahanama himself stayed at the bottom of the pond, tying his hair to a tree trunk, and blocked the hole at the bottom of the pond. As a result, a long time passed, and many people from the Shakya clan took this opportunity to escape. Later, when King Vidudabha saw this, Mahanama had bravely sacrificed himself in this selfless way. Then the king Vidudabha tragically killed 70,000 of their innocent people. So historically, there are different accounts of this event. Many, including some of our own various stories about karma and cause and effect, describe it differently. In reality, however, truly, in some authentic scriptures like the Udāna Varga, it is said that they killed 70,000 of each other. This too is a karmic retribution, the result being fishermen in a previous life. What does this mean? It means that back then, the Buddha, who possessed the complete qualities of abandonment and realization, even such a Buddha was powerless. It was his own clan. All 70,000 of them were killed. Surely, if he could, he would have saved them. But at that time, there was nothing he could do. So no matter who you are, when the time comes to die, when your life is truly exhausted, even the Buddha can't help, parents can't help, relatives can't help, no one can help. So we need to understand this, that everyone will face death one day. Perhaps no one can do anything about it. So first of all, whether as an individual person or as a collective group of people, no one can find a way to keep you from dying. Even if it's just to simply extend your life by a single extra day, I'm truly afraid that's not entirely possible either. When the Lord of Death inevitably comes before you, no one can truly prolong your life. No matter if you're a valiant hero, a doctor or an expert, no one can do anything about it, especially in the age of the Dharma's decline. As time passes, life becomes shorter and shorter. At this time, there is no way to extend your life. That's how it is. And then Dōnu xiāwa xī zhēn dōn dō xiā, dē dāg xī nē dāg gān dō xiā yī, dē dār mēn dō yōng sī xiōng bā nā, gā dāng nāp jīn qī wē ngōng bār bchūm. Sometimes there are more words, sometimes fewer words. It is the same in the Tibetan version of the Udāna Sūtra. What has been done, what is being done, and what is yet to be done, when people are making their future plans, the inevitable realities of old age, sickness, and death can completely destroy them. This truth mainly refers to our death, which can unexpectedly come at any time, in any place. Sadly, some people are unaware of this fundamental truth. So at that particular time, the Buddha also looked upon these sentient beings and spoke this verse to inspire a sense of renunciation in them. The meaning is that, for example, with anything that we do, this particular matter has already been fully completed and finished. This matter is currently being done, and this matter is yet to be done in the future. People are always making such plans. In the commentary, the people referred to are sentient beings. Sometimes the Indian commentaries really are like that. Yesterday it was said that man means male, woman means female. When introducing things, sometimes the commentaries seem to say here that
people refers to sentient beings. So sentient beings are also making plans, right? In daily life regarding all aspects of work, career, and so on, people are always like this. Oh, what did I actually manage to do this entire year? What exactly am I doing at this moment, and what precisely am I planning to accomplish in the upcoming year? So on that particular day, as the new year dawned, when I was writing in my diary, I distinctly remember saying to myself, this year, because the situation at that time was quite serious, in the past, every year I would probably make plans for the upcoming new year. I wonder, how many classes will I actually teach? This year, it truly seemed like there wasn't much hope at all. Then I said, for this particular year, my yearly teaching goal was 10 classes. Because at that time, if I could teach 10 classes, that would be good enough. But now, I've already finished teaching 10 classes quite long ago. Sometimes preparation is like this. The plan is specifically made for this purpose. People all truly talk like this, right? They make such preparations for everything they do. But in reality, you don't know that when you're actually doing something, in the end, it can be destroyed by aging, illness, or death. Some people have plans for the future like this. But in the end, despite their various efforts and attempts, they all inevitably fail and ultimately die. So as for people, everyone might have different plans, unique strategies, and distinct mental preparations. But you don't truly know that for some things you might actually die before you're even fully prepared, or die in the middle of carrying them out. In the past, our guru, the Precious One, also said, for other things, if you have some preparation but don't finish them, it's not very good. But when it comes to teaching, expounding Dharma, that's what he wanted most in his life, just like previous Khenpo Chukcha. If one could die while teaching, expounding Dharma, then in one's own life, that would be the most profoundly successful and impactful thing. Indeed, in this significant regard, all of us individuals who are present here, whether we teach the Dharma in the future or practice it ourselves, this indeed in life should be the most important. As for other things, indeed there may be various kinds of pursuits and different goals and aspirations. For some people, buying a car in this lifetime might be very important. For others, building a house is very important. Some people want to travel around the entire world, sightseeing and truly enjoying the beauty of nature. And that is very important and meaningful to them. It's fine to have these ideals or wishes, but if we talk about what is truly meaningful, as a Mahayana Buddhist, it is important to continuously keep learning and growing throughout your entire life and beyond, and to have this kind of spirit at the same time to share the Dharma and Buddhist principles you have understood with others as well. In addition, every evening each of us also shares something. And this is also very good. Some people may not have the opportunity to teach or explain the Dharma in the future, so now, when we are guiding others, we can talk about it a bit. The merits of Mahayana Buddhism are truly inconceivable. So in this lifetime as well, spreading the Dharma is also a kind of arising condition and karmic connection. If you have such conditions in the future, it is the most precious and most important thing. Among all the things we do, it is the rarest and most valued. Of course, this kind of karmic connection also requires various conditions. Now, regarding this case, when the Buddha was residing in Rajagriha, there was a certain individual who attained the fruit of stream entry. After attaining this spiritual milestone of stream entry, he felt quite satisfied. He no longer diligently strove to make further progress or continued to practice diligently. He thought, now I have already blocked the doors to the 3 lower realms and can truly experience the profound happiness that exists within both the heavenly and human realms. That was precisely what he thought. While he was thinking this, he suddenly died. After he died, he was reborn, perhaps into a rather lowly or humble situation. But sometimes the Indian cricket commentaries are not always very easy to fully understand. He was conceived within a human body. Then when he was born, because of various karmic causes from his previous life, a maidservant during the night threw him completely naked and vulnerable onto a thorny tree at a desolate crossroads. At that particular time, he was experiencing extreme pain and suffering. It was unbearable, and just at that moment, in a nearby verdant bamboo grove, some local lay people discovered him. After they carefully found him, they gently picked him up and began to raise him. As he gradually grew up, he developed a profound sense of renunciation
toward the endless cycle of birth and death in samsara. Later, he attained ultimate nirvana. So, in this story, it can also be said that there are some things he might have wanted to enjoy, but he didn't finish doing them or died while still enjoying them to their fullest. And for many of us, sometimes in our daily lives, for example, people in the world nowadays, when they're drinking in a bar, they might suddenly die of a stroke. Some die while driving and listening to music. I remember when I went to Lhasa before, there was a car accident at that time. Fortunately, no one in our car died, but I still remember very clearly and distinctly that the driver was indeed wearing a thick and luxurious otter fur coat at that particular moment in time. He also had a string of zi beads around his neck, and he used black hair oil on his hair, so it was extremely shiny. As a result, on the road from the airport to Lhasa, he was driving extremely fast. It seemed to me that his driving skills weren't very good. Then suddenly the car overturned. We rolled into the middle of the Yarlung Changpo River. Luckily, we managed to get out. And when we did, the music in the car was still playing very loudly. We really wanted to turn it off, but there was no way to do it. The car was already submerged in the water, and it seemed like all of us. One of the lamas was injured quite badly. He was a bit upset and was crying by himself, bleeding profusely on one side and shedding deeply bitter tears on the other. But sometimes when people are extremely happy, suddenly a lot of changes can happen. There are situations like that too. There's also a story. It's said that there was someone who wanted to become a monk, but many people, including his family, didn't want him to ordain. But he insisted on becoming a monk, and after ordaining, he didn't really study, truly contemplate, or practice properly. He might not have even attended teachings, nor relied on a spiritual teacher. He was always distracted and careless. Later, some of his relatives and friends asked him about Buddhist topics, like, well, what is an arhat? He couldn't answer. He had never even heard of it. He had never even heard of what an arhat is. Then they asked him about some other Buddhist principles, and whatever questions they asked him, he truly didn't know at all. In the end, many of them emphatically said that there's really no significant difference between you being ordained and not being ordained. Actually, as a monastic, as a Buddhist, at the very least, you should understand and study some basic Buddhist principles. You still need to know and also learn some very important things. If you don't study, you'll end up just like this person. Later, when the Buddha learned about this situation, he also spoke this verse. Actually, this story is probably mainly aimed at those who, although they have become monks, he hasn't done anything at all that a monastic should do, whether it's not done, being done, or already done. So when absolutely nothing has been done, later on it seems he died or something like that. There are cases like this. So I think as Buddhists, and especially as Mahayana practitioners, we should deeply consider this important matter. We need to understand the basic rules. Nowadays, some people are still good when it comes to listening and contemplating the teachings, studying systematically in all aspects, and systematically practicing the preliminaries. In this regard, some people quietly follow the rules on their own. Some people seem to take a shortcut approach and then receive a lot of advanced teachings. Now I hear that some lamas also carry around discs of secret teachings and go everywhere saying, I'm from such and such institute, or sent by so-and-so person, and I can give you empowerments for secret teachings. You can copy my secret teaching materials. But actually, a truly qualified lama who can give empowerments go out and promote themselves saying, I want to give you transmissions. That's probably unnecessary. A lot of people ask me, and honestly, there are some people I don't even know. Some names I've heard of, some I haven't. This kind of situation is happening in many places now. Of course, we're not being stingy about it either. If someone truly has the right karmic connection and qualifications in this area, then it's actually fine. But generally speaking, these secret teachings aren't something you can just sneak around and get or instantly attain enlightenment by obtaining them through some other means. Secret teachings have a very systematic process of listening, contemplation, and practice. And this isn't something where actually everyone, truly all people can just receive group empowerments together.
Among the empowerments of secret teachings, some are transmitted individually and some are only given to a select few. For all those who have taken refuge, whether before or not, or those who haven't practiced any preliminary practices and want to directly receive teachings like the Dzogchen for heart drops, I don't know these cases. As for whether these teachers are qualified, I won't comment. But it's true that some widely recognized teachers are more reliable. Otherwise, in Tibet as well, generally speaking, not every prominent Khenpo or distinguished Tulku, not everyone is qualified. This kind of qualification is not for others to judge. One should know it oneself. Even among the many rigorous and demanding teachers in our esteemed institute, they should, in principle, have this kind of authoritative qualification. But on the one hand, they maintain the realization and experiential state of their own mind stream. And on the other hand, they do not casually reveal secrets or transmit them indiscriminately. So in some respects, perhaps we shouldn't be so impatient. If we get too impatient, it's as if we're turning these secret teachings into a kind of commodity. If your own mind stream truly gains benefit, then there's nothing. No teaching has an owner, and you can obtain it. But if the basic system of Buddhism as a whole, if your faith hasn't been properly cultivated, if your renunciation hasn't been properly cultivated, and furthermore, if you haven't practiced the basic preliminaries like refugee and bodhicitta, if you haven't done these preliminary practices, perhaps you may not gain benefit. Of course, in the West, there are also cases like this where people don't need to practice any preliminaries at all. Whether they have faith or not, they are given the highest sacred Dzogchen empowerment and then taught the highest direct pointing instructions. But it seems that looking back, indeed, some of these particular items are not always so stable and reliable. It's actually more important to study step by step in sequence. Otherwise, some Buddhists don't even know the names of the empowerments. They can't even distinguish between an empowerment and a blessing touch on the crown. Then they say, in front of a certain Lama, I've received the 4 heart essence empowerments. You give me an empowerment. How give an empowerment? You just put your hand on my head and then give it to me like that. Other people have given me empowerments in a very simple way, some kind of this or that empowerment. So you should also give me an empowerment. That's why sometimes we develop some doubts. It's not about judging whether it's right or wrong. It's really hard to say what's right or wrong. It's not easy to judge. But we still need to study systematically. We should treat the rules of Vajrayana with great seriousness. How did the great masters of the past conduct their affairs? We should also do our utmost to follow their example. Although we can't say we're completely proper and in accordance with the Dharma, every ordinary person has some flaws. It's very hard to achieve. It's easy to talk about, but actually doing it is very difficult. But at the very least, we should do our best and put effort into this area. Otherwise, if all of our rules become completely chaotic, maybe everyone will indeed receive the teachings, but if they do, will it truly become like building upon fragile ice? One's own mind stream could be completely destroyed, leading to wrong views, and in the very end, one might not even have complete faith in this sacred Dharma. Indeed, situations like this could potentially arise. Next,
Terter tagta tangzan laga nyambara zhuk, tsumba kielar kietang gavim tamar tu. Dernamr detang cheba ngumbra zernon la, gerlong takko kieshi parur ror ki. Therefore, one should delight in meditation, abiding in equanimity and peace, arouse diligence, and be mindful of birth and aging. The demon king and retinue have been subdued. Thus, the community of monks can transcend the shore of birth and death. Because of all these important reasons mentioned earlier, at all times, truly at all times, it is essential to remember we should rejoice in or take delight in practicing meditation. Because through meditation, the improper mental engagements in our mind stream can be eliminated. The main types of meditation are meditation with characteristics and meditation without characteristics. Meditation with characteristics. If you contemplate impermanence every day, that is also a form of meditation. Meditation without characteristics is when you are not attached to anything at all, and your mind abides in equanimity and focus. All notions of existence and non-existence, right and wrong, settle down, and you abide in equality and peace. Then, during the process of practice, do not feel satisfied and do not let your mind become weary. Be extremely diligent, indeed. Whatever we truly do in our lives, diligence is very important, a diligent mind. And do not be concerned about the edge of life and death, because if you seek to cultivate the path and realize the path, your mind cannot always be preoccupied with the boundary between life and death.
because people in the world today, they remain trapped in samsara and cannot break free. We should transcend and depart from this cycle of rebirth. In this way, the demon king, all afflictions, all the demon kings of greed, anger, and ignorance will also be completely subdued. As for the demon's retinue, their followers, as well as karma, one's own karma and habitual tendencies and so on, all of these will be subdued as well. In the end, one attains the fruit of cultivating the path. So whether it's a bhikshu or a monk of this kind, of course, the term bhikshu actually has several different names, but in a broad sense it simply means a practitioner. The Buddha often referred to his followers as bhikshus, but in reality, in this way, it also applies to us as practitioners who can transcend or reach the other shore of birth and death. Because samsara is this shore and nirvana is the other shore. One will reach the other shore of samsara, that is nirvana without remainder. This is indeed the ultimate purpose of our spiritual practice. This is therefore the end of the first chapter on impermanence. All right, that's all for today's introduction.
Bandara Bandara